Yo, yo, yo. This is Candy B Knittin. I'm Candy B. I be knitting. Uh, for full transparency, this week I had big plans, or last week rather, I had big plans. I thought I was going to be able to show y'all a finished object, which is my oldest work in progress that I've been working on, and that would be the Summer Secret crop top by Jessie Maed. And I started this last year. What year is this? This is 2024, right? So in spring 2023, I had the bright idea while everyone else was being like, oh, my summer knits. I'm planning my summer knits. And I was just like, I too love summer knits. I love wearing and layering crop tops and tank tops. And I also have a lot of single skeins of yarn, etc., etc. And this project was one of those lessons in just because I like to wear something doesn't mean I like to knit it. So I finished this in about a week. I did bust starts. The original pattern calls for like fingering weight, or DK. If you want a lighter gauge, you do like fingering weight, or you could do a tighter gauge with DK. I did like almost like a bralette style, nice thick band, did some bust shaping, and then I got to the straps, and I probably got to the straps, midsummer, and I just could not figure out what I wanted. The original pattern has I-cord straps, and I wanted something a bit more supportive than that, and something with a little bit more, I guess, modesty than that. And so I was just like, maybe I'll knit straps, maybe I'll do a garter stitch strap, maybe I'll sew on straps. And I just literally, this ended up in timeout for all summer long. And I actually bought a couple of different fabric options to sew on straps. And in the end, I decided I wanted to double knit straps. And so I taught myself to double knit the straps. Very easy, but not the most fun thing. So I have been chugging along for months knitting these straps, and I finally finished them. I actually have, last week I bound them off, blocked them. They kind of feel like they might be a little damp still. And now the only thing I need to do to finish this project in time for this summer is sew these bad boys on. But I have not done that because I actually need a second set of hands and or a mannequin in order to get these pinned in the right place. And so just chugging along, but I just want it to be fully transparent. Sometimes I want to be like, oh, look at my finished object, but that just doesn't pan out the way I think it's gonna pan out. So maybe next week, maybe 2 weeks from now. I would just hate to have spent so long on this and not commit the time to doing proper finishing and measuring things out and pinning things in the exact right place. The other thing about this is this pattern calls for like negative to no ease. And since last summer, I've probably lost maybe 5-6 pounds, and I tend to lose that volume in the chest area, so I'm not even super confident that this is going to fit me in the way that I intended, and so I have to kind of mentally work through that piece. But at this point, I just want to finish it just to say I finished it so I can move on with my life. So you might ask, what have you done this week? This week, I did a lot of plying. So y'all may remember I was talking about my spinning wheel. I have a Ashford Traditional, and it comes with 4 bobbins. And some days I'm like, oh, I wish I had, maybe I'll buy a couple more bobbins. But I honestly believe that 4 is the best because that allows me to ply onto the bobbins and then have space to ply off of the bobbins. And I believe my exact words were, if I had a lot of bobbins, then I would get into the position where I had a lot of plying to do at one time, and I don't necessarily want to do that. That would give me like the freedom to spin a lot more without necessarily plying, and then I would get overwhelmed by the amount of plying that I would have to do. So boom, I sat down to finally ply what I've had going on my spindle. Then I remembered that I had been doing a lot of drop spindling, so I had everything that was coming off of my drop spindle to spindle. And then we're just going to get into it because I have a lot to show y'all. So yeah, let me thumbnail. I've been doing a lot of plying this week, and last time we spoke, I talked about, or not last time we spoke, but last time I talked about my spinning, I talked about, trying to, really improve my plying, because I feel like that's an area that I lack in. I really want, and I spend the time to I'm short forward draw, long draw, spinning across the top, and then when I get to plying, I can tend to rush through that part. And so I really do want to work on that technique as well, and spend the time to make these beautiful plies, but then I want to come out with a nice balanced yarn. And so I was looking into proper plying techniques. I was watching some Jillian Eve videos, and I had this Gotlin, which I've been spinning for a while now, and this is about 4 ounces of this. This is a 2-ply. This is when I really started getting into long draw, just because the fibers are very slippery. And so I found it was a lot of tension up here trying to do a short forward, I'm doing the motion right here. So, pulling not allowing any twist into the fiber supply. And so part way through through spinning this, I kind of naturally started to do more of a long draw, where I was allowing more and more twist to come up, and using, having more length coming out of the spinning wheel and giving the fiber more space in the take up area. And then I got to plying it, and let me see if y'all will be able to see. I've since washed it. It's still damp, but y'all can see it. The skein is not like twisting back on itself. It's fairly balanced. The only thing I found in this method, and trying to just slow down my plying and be more intentional, I need to figure out that balance between plying and getting, not over plying, not putting too much twist into my ply, but also adjusting my twist angle, because I tend to over ply just because I tend to like the look of that more when the twist angle is fairly tight, I guess you could say, like the individual plies are coming together like that much tighter. I just think that look just feels more, I guess, yarny. And I feel like there are definitely areas where maybe I underplied, and I'm still just trying to find that balance. Well, the difference between 2 plies sitting side by side, and then, how they twist together. And so playing around with that. The idea being that if you have too much twist in your finished yarn, you're going to get a bias in your final knitted project. So that idea of, okay, I like the skein to look a certain way, but I also want my knitting to look a certain way. And my plan with this yarn is I want to find a really nice colorwork vest and or pullover, or not pullover, what do you guys call it? Slipover, I believe is what most of the world calls them, but a sleeveless sweater, if you will, with some stranded color work. And this would be like a nice background color, I feel like. And also this is fairly prickly, and so I wouldn't necessarily want this, around my neck in a scarf or up on my neck in a sweater form. Yeah, so just trying, it's just still practicing though, practicing, but then also trying to plan for projects so that my practicing, I can kind of bring meaning to my practicing. This one I really feel like I struggle with because this is the Green Goat Farm, the plying pair, and this one has a bit of silk in it. And I'm thinking silk might need a little, not silk. I think this has a little bit of silk, but I think it also has like some tencel or bamboo in it. And I think it needs just a bit more twist. I'll bring it a little closer. I've noticed that if I bring things too close, you get more shadows from my light. And so I'm still trying to find the balance of how to show y'all things on camera. This one definitely has areas where I can just see just two plies side by side rather than getting a nice twist angle. The other thing I'm thinking about in regards to getting a more balanced yarn and getting the visual I'm going for is maybe I just need to transition away from 2-ply. I tend to do a lot of 2-ply just because it's quicker to make and I'll get more yardage, but I don't necessarily need more yards of a yarn that I'm not that pleased with. And I do believe the more that 3rd ply, like I was saying before about, you know, having a bias in my knitted fabric, I believe that 3rd ply is going to bring more of a balanced look to the funnel yarn. So I probably just need to plan to do more 3 plies. And that brings me to, if y'all recall, so I did the actual spinning on my wheel and I did the plying on my wheel. These next 2, if y'all recall, I was doing the 100 days of drop spindling towards the end of 2023 into 2024. Didn't quite get to 100 days, but I did spin up a bunch of odds and ends from Into the Whirled. And so I just spun these up on my drop spindles, and then as I was filling up my drop spindles, made little center pull cakes out of them, and then decided to spin them up all on my wheel. And I did a 3-ply with the idea that because it's literally called odds and ends from Into the Whirled, so it's all just random little chunks of all different types of fiber, and they don't tell you what type of fiber it is. It could be superwash, it could be Corriedale, it could be yak, it could be silk, it could be whatever. And I decided to do a 3-ply just because I'm working with all these different fibers that draft differently, that spin up differently. I thought that would bring a nice balance to it. And also, in case, like I said, like in case there was an area of just super wash yarn, it would maybe balance out with some of the more woolier wools or what have you. And it could be something I could use all together. And so this is that. And like I said, this is a 3-ply. And I just think the way those plies come together, and I did the same. Jillian Eve says, when you're plying, you pull, it's almost like doing a ply back test when you're spinning the individual plies. You know, when you're spinning and you're drafting just regular plying, you pull out a long length of that fiber you're spinning and you do a ply back test to test how it's going to look like as a finished plied yarn, how it twists back on itself. But when you're plying, you pull that length out, and if the yarn spins back on itself in the plied form, it's not balanced. And so I've been playing around with pulling it out and seeing if it's balanced or not. And I actually did put quite a bit of effort into making sure that this was more balanced. And this is probably the best I've done for it to be a spun on my drop spindle. So I'm not very mindful when I'm using my drop spindle. I'm just kind of playing around in the evenings, 15 minutes a night, over the course of 2 months. So there's going to be, and every fiber and, you know, every 20 grams of this wool or this fiber is different. I was pretty content with how balanced I was able to get these. And I do like the look. There are some areas like here where you can see there's it's not super, you can see this one's a fluffier one, and you got some skinnier stuff going on. There's areas like that, but for what it is, I think it's pretty cool. And the idea that this is all random stuff from Into the Whirled, but you can see some level of like almost like a color story here, like they're in the same family of they have an artistic vision, I guess you could say, it Into the Whirled. Like, okay, wow, they understand colors and how colors are supposed to go together. And the fact that I randomly spun all this up and then just literally just pulled out random balls and applied them together, and they came out this. There's like this yellow in here that maybe is a little bit different, but for the most part, the colors really go well together. I don't know what I would do with this quite yet, but it is fun. Maybe I'll just label it 100 Days of Drop Spindling 2024 and just remember it always fondly. But I really like how this came together. So I think I'm going to kind of start to transition more towards doing a 3-ply, and I might get to where I want to be more so there. So that's that. So those are all plied, washed, with the intention of really being intentional about my plying and thinking about it. This next foray is just me. Well, actually, I have not washed this yet. This is my 2023 bat. So basically, over the course of 2023, every single time I would do a fiber project, working on my drum carder or working from a braid or what have you, I would have underspun pieces or fluff that came off or little neps that came up, and I would just put it into one big bag, and I ran them. At the end of the year, I had a Ziploc bag full of bits from every fiber project I did last year. And so I spun this on my drop spindle and kind of broke it into, I ended up with 4 center pull balls. I probably could have weighed the fiber and got it closer to 3, but I did a 3-ply with that. This one was a little bit more wacky just because it was a lot going on, and there's some thick and thin spots. I also put some stellina in there, so there's some sparkle in there, but this needs to be washed because there's also a bit of like a little bit of dirty fleece in here too that I spun into here. And so that's that. This is my 2024 or 2023 bat, and so I'll probably end up washing this, and I think I'd probably do more of like some sort of home good out of this, like a doily or an antimacassar or something like that. I don't know. I don't think I would want to wear this just because it's got a lot going on in it, and it doesn't feel very good. But fun. I have another bag going for this year. This, I was not cognizant of any sort of plying plan. So this is, I had the wheel out, I was doing all this plying, and then I remembered I have a bunch of like plastic shoe boxes I'm keeping all of my yarn in, and I have one box full of a bunch of singles, because when I first started spinning, I had all these drop spindles, and I was fairly meticulous about spinning up fiber, filling up my drop spindles, and then I would take toilet paper rolls and use those as bobbins to spin off of, and I would create 2-plies or 1-ply, and I was like really into that when I first started using the drop spindle. And then I discovered plying bracelets. I discovered center pull balls. I got my wheel, and I was doing a lot of chain plying, and so I kind of got away from the whole bobbin thing. But nonetheless, whenever I would spin, I would inevitably have some bit of a single left over. And so I collected a bunch of those in a box. And I think I was watching, I think her channel's called Not Quite Enough Yarn. And she was saying how she was doing a project with some of her handspun, but her handspun was like very old handspun. And she was just like, I should have used this sooner because I've gotten so much better at spinning. This yarn isn't as good as I can do, now. And so she made the project and she was happy with the project, but she was like, I have more better yarn to use now. And I was like so precious about my spinning in the past that I'm like, not that excited about it anymore. So I decided that that was my signal, just to take all of those singles and just spin them up and just get them out of my stash and then into something, because I was like I was saving all these singles with the idea that maybe I could do some sort of project sometime, or do some, like, I was thinking maybe I could weave with them, but I don't think singles, especially unfinished singles, would be great for that. And then I was like, okay, maybe I could use them as leaders on my wheel, but that seemed like a waste because, this was like my earliest spun yarn, and, I do have some sentimentality about it. And then I was thinking, oh, maybe I can ply it with some other yarn. I'm like, well, the quality is very different. My spinning technique is very different. I also wasn't 100% sure I had spun them all in the same direction. And then I had also, part of that Into the Whirled, I used to practice support spindling. And so I had a bunch of kind of chunky long draw single plies that I wanted to do something with. And so this is it. Like I said, I was not mindful at all about plying evenly. I don't even know if I could have gotten them super even. They have not been washed yet. And these are like just I call this my junk drawer spin. I just literally took a, big plastic storage bin and just started plying and just filled up my bobbin with these tooth guys. And I also like it too because I can see different color stories, like, oh wow, that pink and gray is really nice. Oh, mustard, and I have some bear wool, like this bear. Anytime you see this like white bear color, that's like the first merino I bought, and I spun that on my drop spindle before I spun anything else. And it's like, yeah, you can save that and be like, oh, my first time spinning, isn't that fun? But I'm not, I'm just going to sit it in a shoebox forever. At least if it's yarn, then I might use it for something else. I think this might be a good, maybe like you can use it in a pillow somehow, or do some kind of like maybe artsy wall hanging with it or something. I don't know, but we shall see. But like I said, it has a much better chance of getting used now that it's actually spun up into a decent amount of yarn. And then I can do something with it, or it might give me an idea, or maybe I can use it as, maybe I'll just end up cutting it up and making tassels and pom-poms. But I figured, nothing ventured, nothing gained. I do like these areas where it's the real thick stuff. I tend to default to a much thinner yarn, and so I do feel very much inspired to do some thicker spins. And, you can't beat how soft that is. So I'm just doing my thing. A little bit of learning some techniques, a little bit of trying to clean out some space for some other things, a lot of just doing laundry. The only time the bathtub gets clean is when I have to wash yarn. So I scrubbed down the bathtub, filled up the bathtub with yarn. And this isn't even the half of it as far as things I want to get through. I am falling very much in love with long draw right now. I know everyone's kind of on the long draw train. But there's something just very meditative, and it just feels so much, every step of the way I'm getting just closer and closer to just turning into a sheep. I started off, I'm gonna do a little knitting, and then I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do a little spinning. Oh, I'm gonna buy a little fleece. Oh, I need to process the fleece. Oh, let's make a bat on my drum card and just get it as fluffy as humanly possible, and then just playing around with that. But then also, like I said, trying to be mindful of, are you just making yarn because it's fun to make yarn, which I love making yarn, or, are you still, feeding this habit of wanting to knit? And so far, most of my projects that I'm planning to knit do involve commercially spun yarn, and I'm just like, well, what does that mean? that was my other thought too. I think I do have a friend I could give this to who loves knitting with fun chunky yarn. She likes knitting small projects with chunky yarn. So we're like the perfect, odd couple of hobbyist. And so I think she might have fun with this too. And that's another thing too. I could just keep spinning and then just give away everything I spend. We shall see. The other thing I want to catch y'all up on is last week I showed y'all that thrift store sweater that I got, or not thrift store sweater. It was going to the thrift store, but it was actually free to me. And I have finished frogging the entire sweater. This was a sweater from LL Bean. You want to see my project bag? This is one of my newest bags. It came from a coworker, and it was a free with purchase bag. She went to like Bath and Body Works, or actually, does it tell me on the? Yeah, this is. Yeah, Bath and Body Works. She got this free with purchase and was like, "Hey, Candy B, you like bags?" And I was like, I like bags, and it's got a zipper. But I frogged the whole sweater. I'm not going to pull out all of the sweater because it's a lot. It was a large, tall sweater. And I was correct. All the yarn is held double. So if I wanted to get down to like a fingering weight, I could do that. I could take all these balls apart. I'm not going to do that right now. I think I am going to use them together. But also I just kind of need to get it washed. So yarn purist, do not distress. I'm not going to leave it in the ball like this. I'm going to put it on my Nitty Knotty. But as you can see, my Nitty Knotty has been very busy this week. I'm going to put it on my Nitty Knotty, make skeins, and then wash all of these into skeins. And that should help relax the crinkling, which the crinkling isn't too bad. And this ball, I think this is one of the body balls. So the sweater was fully seamed. It had a front panel, back panel, and 2 seamed sleeves. And so I think these balls was one of the front or back panels, and it's about 125 grams. This is one of the sleeves, which was about like 90 some odd grams. This was, I think, the bottom ribbing of the sweater, and that was about, I think it's about 50 grams. And so I'm going to keep all of these bigger balls for myself to work with. And I'm thinking, because I had Mr. Rulu try the sweater on to see if he could, just how the fit was on him. And he was about to burst into flames. And so this is 100% lamb's wool. And so it was very, very warm, thick sweater. And I'm thinking, you guys are going to laugh, but I was like, I've been wanting to make like a more wintry type ranunculus, because all my ranunculi or short sleeve and cropped. And so I was like, I should make like the full version of the pattern, make it oversized and make it long sleeve, but that's not going to use up very much of this yarn. My other thought is that I have the Silver Bells pattern by Tin Can Knits, and it has like a lace yoke with bobbles. My thought being, with this yarn, doing something at maybe a more loose, open gauge will help not make me overheat in this. Or, like I said, I could take all these balls apart and have double the yarn in 2 different threads. The other bits, so like I said, I'm keeping all the big balls for myself. Then I had a lot of kind of smaller areas, like all the ribbing was separate. So it makes me think that the way machine-made sweaters, like mass-produced sweaters, are made is that they have the ribbing somewhere, and then they have the sweater somewhere, and then they join them together somehow. And so this is like one of the wrist pieces, and this is about like 10-11 grams of yarn. The sweater was also striped, if y'all recall, and so I have these small balls of striped yarn. And I really am not in the mood to just piece together a lot of small pieces of yarn, so these are actually going to get donated, and maybe someone will want to knit with them, but more likely you could do some other kind of crafting with them. You could do some sort of felting project, or you could actually use carding, hand combs or cards to make this back into fiber and spin it again if you wanted. You could make pom-poms. You could do all kinds of arts and crafts projects with them. But that sweater was striped, if y'all recall, and the stripes were the stripes. Eventually I'm going to get to the end of this. But yeah, the stripes were about just a few meters of yarn. And I don't really feel like working with a bunch of little balls of color. Also, like I said, the sweater itself had the yarn held double. All of the stripes were singles, which makes me think that maybe at some time LL Bean had colors, like whole sweaters this color, and then these were like just leftovers, and so they were like, oh, let's make a striped sweater and use these as leftovers, because it was like very minimal amounts of those, and they were kind of ratty when I pulled them out. They just don't feel very pleasant to work with. It made me feel like, oh, these stripes came from some corner of the warehouse somewhere. And then there were just a bunch of little areas where the yarn was a little bit shorter. And then remember I said that the shoulders had been, what is that word called? Serged together. And so I have this bag here, which is all of the just tiny little bits of yarn, places where I had to cut the sweater because, it wasn't coming apart, things like that. I have like little bits of fiber coming off of here. There was a button placard on the sweater, and that was all sewn. And so that just kind of came apart when I took the sweater apart. And so these are not, I would not feel comfortable donating this to someone. This is trash. Long story short. So this is actually going to go into my compost because it's still 100% wool. And so it'll naturally biodegrade, and it will give very much needed nitrogen to my garden. And so this little bit will not go to waste either. So just wanted to give you guys an update on that. Like I said, I still need to skein up the yarn I'm going to keep, get that washed, get that clean, get that dry, and then just keep chugging along. That's all I really wanted to share with y'all this week. If you're at Maryland Sheep and Wool this weekend, I hope you're having a ton of fun. I hope you're staying dry. Hope you're making new friends. Hope you're buying up all the fleece. Until next time, this has been Candy Bee Knittin'. I'm Candy Bee. I be knitting, I be spinning, I be washing yarn. I be staring into the abyss, and the abyss be staring back at me. If you want to talk to me, drop a comment. Hit me up on Instagram at Rulude. Send me an email, candybknittin@gmail.com. Also share this video with your friends, because maybe your friends want to chat with me too. Until the next time,